Hello, Robertson Stewart. Welcome to the Doing CX Right show.
Hello, Stacy. Great to be here, and thank you very much for your invitation, Very happy to be with you tonight.
Oh, it was such a privilege to have you. And by the way, I know your name's very long, so it's Rob for short. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. It was Robertson Stewart. It's a bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Well, good. So we're going to go with Rob. And by the way, I love your accent, but we'll get to that. So,
okay, thank you.
Who are you? What do you do for a living?
Well, what I do for a living most of the time is I teach at university and college in Paris, in French and in English, and I teach leadership and management most of the time. I also do some classes on strategy, business strategy, and how to go about building business. But my main point is really leadership and management. Yeah, my main expertise.
Yeah, why?
And I'm also. Well, it's because I was a manager for nearly 35 years, and in the hotel industry and the service industry, service sector, and I was basically at the end of my career before I started this business, I was manager of the 3 biggest hotels in Europe, so all with over 1,000 rooms and like more than 1,000 people, in each team. So it's.
Yeah. So you're just about to say also. What else did you?
Yeah, I'm an author of several books. Well, 2 books so far, a third one on the way, on management, leadership, and management. And one of them, the one that's out at the moment in the States, is 1-to-1, and it's how to spend quality time with individuals for engagement and success. That's the full title of the book. And the other one, the one before that, was called Employee Power, and how to gain competitive advantage by being nice to your employees.
Oh, that is such a good topic, and we're going to get there. Before we do, what's a fun fact people may or may not know about you?
I think something I keep secret quite a lot is that I'm obsessed with fishing. Fishing for fish, and especially fly fishing. So when I'm in Scotland, I'm always in the river, in the middle of the rivers with my fly rod and fishing for trout. But the interesting fact is I don't actually eat them. I take care of them and I put them back in the water, and it's not because they don't get hurt, basically, because I use hooks without barbs. So I take the fish, I just look at it, hold it, and then put it back in the water. Yes, and when I tell people I go fishing, they always think I'm killing lots of fish and stuff, but I don't kill any.
Well,
but I love fishing.
Well, I'm going to use that analogy today because we're going to be fishing together around the best leadership tips and ways to really engage your employees and your agents. So we're going to definitely go fishing and sharing the fruits of your labor here. So as we begin, tell me a little bit around engagement. What does engagement actually really mean?
Well, engagement means a lot of things, actually. But first and foremost, it means the person is engaged with the work that they're doing. Yeah. It means that they actually have a purpose and they thrive in their workplace whilst doing their job, which means basically that they are engaged because they believe that the job that they're doing is important. So that's the very first thing. Secondly, it's also engaging with the colleagues in the workplace, and to engage properly and have healthy relationships with those you're working with. That's also part of engagement. Then the third part is more about the company culture. Is to do with engaging with the culture. So basically, you're in tune with the culture within the organization. The fourth thing that's even more important is that you're in tune with your boss or your direct superior or your manager, because after all, people, in my opinion, work for people. They don't work for organizations. If someone's got to really engage, the best thing that can happen is that there's a great relationship both with the culture in the organization and with their direct manager. And this allows engagement, and especially engagement without having any toxic conditions around it,
People listening might say, well, what's the difference between engagement and commitment?
hmm Okay. Well, engagement basically means that they believe in the company they're working for. Yeah. Commitment, you can be committed to a job. You can be committed in terms of, you go and you work your best, you do your best, so you're efficient, yeah. But it's different from being effective, yeah. Being effective, especially as a manager, yeah, is you're going to have to really be engaged, not just committed, because you can be committed to what you're doing without actually being fully engaged. I don't know if I made myself clear, but for me, there's the main difference. It's between efficiency, which is a management tool, yeah, and leadership, which is how to be effective. And that's what it's all about for me, is to be effective. Yeah. And that's the difference between engagement and being committed.
Why do you believe that achieving employee engagement, why is it so hard?
Well, I think it's so hard. The main reason is because, unfortunately, we're living in times where I think training and the training culture has taken on less and less importance instead of more and more. And what I mean by that more precisely is that managers and leaders often they're chosen experts in their field. So let's take an example of a finance guy who's really good in finance. So he can tell you about a P&L, or he can tell you about the balance sheet. He can tell you about the cash flow. Everything's great. But then you put him in charge of the accounting team. Yeah. Okay. But you don't give him any training on how to manage people. So, so basically what you got, and this happens a lot, you've got experts that are moved into positions of management or leadership positions who aren't prepared to be leaders or managers. They're not trained for it, and they're not accompanied either, which means that not only don't they receive any training, but then even worse, they're not accompanied by, for example, human resources don't even give them an accompaniment to say, here's some training, here's some stuff that can help you. Don't worry, I'm here to help you. And they don't have a mentor, they don't have a coach. They're just left. They're thrown in. It's like being thrown in a swimming pool, yeah, without any equipment, yeah. So you're basically going to drown, So, and that's what happens far too often. And this for me causes massive disengagement because because people don't know how to manage. What they often do is they'll make bad decisions. They'll speak to people badly. They won't know how to run a meeting properly. They won't know how to manage their time properly. They won't know how to manage stress because stressful environments with other people, they just don't know how to do it. And these things are learned behaviors. I mean, managerial behavior is a learned behavior, and leadership behavior too. So they're just basically too often thrown in the deep end. And that's what's causing, in my opinion, what we see as the Great Resignation in the US at the moment. Yeah, it's really to do with toxicity and toxic environments, and basically, to cut a long story short, toxic bosses. Yeah, who don't know what they're doing.
Oh, that is so good. I could dive deep into everything you just said. Well, so let's go into that. So the first thing you said was about training. Managers are thrown into positions and they're not really equipped to be managers. So therefore, their people are less engaged by that leader. Correct?
Yeah, because correct. Yeah, because in fact, we all talk about leadership by example, but then, if leadership by example, you have to know what you're doing. So if the manager in question doesn't know how to manage and he's trying to lead by example, it's going to be a fairly poor example. So he's going to quickly get himself in trouble. He or she, will quickly get himself in trouble. And that's the problem with it. And the other thing is that when we talk about employee empowerment, to empower employees, there are three things on an empowerment triangle, which I'll speak about in my next book, but I can tell you about just now because it's relevant. Is that there are three things towards empowerment, employee empowerment. They are to have the correct tools, it's to have the training to use those tools, and then it's to have the trust of your manager or your leader in order to these steps back and lets you use the training and the tools. Yeah, but then that's not applied far too often to the managers themselves, and this is where it all falls down. This is where the house of cards collapses. Yeah.
Empowerment, trust. Ooh, I think actually trust is the number one reason people
Yeah.
are disloyal and leave, disengaged, as well as customers when they don't trust.
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
You talked about
Uh,
toxic bosses.
yeah.
Do you believe that in a scale of why people leave companies, where does
Yeah.
that fall in the scale to you? Is it really high, middle, or
Well,
low?
yeah, it's nine out of 10. It's 9 out of 10 because if it was a question of salary, yeah, we wouldn't be in the same condition. Yeah, it wouldn't be as big. The big problem is how people are treated in the workplace, I think we've gone back, if I can say, to the start of the Industrial Revolution, and we're now more or less like when Frederick W. Taylor, Taylorism, yeah, and a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. Well, I'm sorry, but that just doesn't work, and particularly today, when people, they expect a better life-work balance, and they're not getting that.
Yeah.
And then when they are at work, if they're getting treated badly and not treated correctly, then of course they're going to leave. It's I wouldn't, and I've been through this situation personally. I think twice in my career where I left because I just couldn't, because they were in the culture. Remember, I talked about the culture earlier. Well, if the culture is not, if you're not aligned with the values or the behavior in the company you're working for, you can't stay.
No.
As a manager, a couple of times I was asked to do things that I just morally and ethically I couldn't do, so I had to leave. And that's it.
Yes.
There's no.
I've been there. I know this very well. Going back to engagement. Now, there are many jobs that are what I call monotonous, day to day, the same thing. And that's typically in a call center, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your advice to keep those people who are, in essence, the front line as well, to keep them engaged? And when they're not all sitting in one building, what do you recommend for people to do to keep them engaged?
Well, I recommend very, very strongly to give them time, to give them management time. And what I mean is very simple. Is to say that you have to have time for formal discussion, and not just with the whole team, on a one-to-one basis. So, because people, after all, a team is only a collection of individuals. So, what you have to make sure is that you know the people, knowledge of people in the team. What they like, their likes, their dislikes. For example, I'll give you a silly example. I was Gary Vee. He gave a great example of this recently. I was laughing when he said it. He said he was stalking people on social media as employees, but he wasn't stalking them. What it was, he was finding out what they liked and what they don't like. And so, for example, he would find out a guy loved the New York Jets, and then you'd get the guy a couple of tickets for the New York Jets, and it would be in an envelope waiting on the guy's desk in the morning. I mean, how good is that, And this is the kind of thing. It's these little things that show respect, show care, that show that you really know who the person is. Because that's the very first thing about recognizing people and recognition, is to actually know something about the person, That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to offer time, is to say that, on a formal basis, on a one-to-one basis, you're going to spend some time with that guy or lady once a month. If it's an hour, it might be an hour and a half, it can be whatever. This depends on the level the person's working at, And then give them time to express themselves, and listen to them,
Listen, huh? Yes.
Listen,
One of the things that I personally like to do in any job I'm in is walk in the day in the life of the employees and the agent's shoes. And so I'll sit and literally be on the phone calls, sit side by side, go out. In my last job in the elevator industry, I'd go out with a technician and spend the day on the job. You learn so much, and then you can really actually deliver excellence to them because they feel heard and understood.
Mm-hmm. That's a great thing to do.
So
And
why don't we do that enough? Why is this so basic?
yeah, it's basic, but it's as I said before, it's unfortunately that if there's too much, we're too customer centric, in today's environment. This is what's causing this huge problem with toxic work environments, is we're being far too consumer and customer centric, And what needs to happen is we need to reverse this and come back to being more employee centric. What I mean by that is J.W. Marriott said it the best. J.W. Marriott, being the founder of the biggest hotel company in the world today, with, I don't know, God, he's got, I don't know, it's like 6 million hotel rooms, And so he said, it was basically take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers, and the business will take care of itself. And it's as simple as that. Except that people, unfortunately, like the guys that are, investing and stockholders and so forth, they're not getting this message. What they're doing is they're push costs down, to push productivity up, they're basically trying to have your cake and eat it at the same time. And there's too much of this going on. And what they don't understand is that one day this model is going to collapse because the people that are sustaining the model, the people who are working, they will no longer be able to afford to buy these goods or services. And then they're going to be in serious trouble. I mean, the companies will be in serious trouble. So this is all part of the same thing. I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit too convoluted and it's not very clear. But what is clear is that is to be nice to people. Is to be nice to people, as J.W. Marriott said. Take care of your people. Or Simon Sinek, another great guy. He said recently, it's leadership's not about being in charge. Leadership's about taking care of those in your charge. This is Simon Sinek. And these guys, they're right. This is the right way forward. It's the good way forward.
So how do you know if your employees and agents are engaged? What are ways that people in different businesses can really know? On one hand, I'd say the obvious, ask them.
Yeah. This is it's a good idea.
How are you doing? How are you feeling? But beyond that very obvious answer, what are other ways that you recommend to have a pulse, engage, and measure engagement?
Well, it's exactly that. It's measure it, isn't it? As Peter Drucker was accused of saying, because he didn't actually say this, but people think he did. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But the Drucker Institute will tell you he never said it. But the words are important. The words are very important because it's true. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's as simple as that. So there has to be some kind of measure of this employee satisfaction, employee engagement, employee experience, whatever you want to call it. And what happens too often in organizations, as I said earlier, you will take the information from, I don't know, if it's a service industry, you'll take it from TripAdvisor, you'll take it from the quality information coming back, the quality reports that you have from your customers, because they'll get all these questionnaires and they'll fill them in and they'll tell you we're satisfied, we're not satisfied. And then you get the same information from the employees. And what happens is people will spend, and I've seen this personally, they'll spend 10 times more time on the customer feedback than on the employee feedback. And sometimes the employee feedback just gets put in a drawer and it's just for later. And that's one of the big problems. It's a major problem. So there has to be a formal way to measure this. You can't just think you can go on it, and it is good, of course, to go and ask people how they feel, but you have to have some formal information, based on a real, and there are so many companies out there that do this work for you. There's no excuse not to do it. And then there's certainly no excuse not to action this information, when you know what's wrong.
Yes. I also like to compare the customer satisfaction NPS results and marry it to the internal employee, especially when there's a sales branch and all over the place. And you really can narrow down which offices are really delivering a great customer experience because it matches the engagement and the customer score. They're so linked. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I've more than seen it. I've practiced it. So basically, well, I don't really. I hope this doesn't seem like boasting, but in a couple of workplaces I've worked at as the leader of the teams, as I said, big teams, nearly 1,000 people, and I had in the companies, both organizations that were involved, I had the highest employee satisfaction scores and the highest customer satisfaction scores. And they were always linked. And in fact, one of them came up by, I'm not exaggerating, in 5 years, I managed to increase the customer satisfaction by 20% and employee satisfaction by 15% at the same time. So there's no secret.
No secret.
There's no secret.
No.
It's completely linked. Yeah. And of course, what it's also linked to is the profits of the organization, because the profits went flying up at the same time. So if anyone doesn't believe that there's not a link between employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and then the profits of the organization, they're fooling themselves. There really is a huge, huge link between these things.
Now, you're in Paris, correct?
Yeah.
And
Paris, France, not Texas.
Yes. So you're in France. And you've been in other areas over your lifetime.
Yep.
Do you find that the principles around increasing employee engagement, which, like you said, impacts customer and profit, all these other benefits, do you find it similar from country to country and places and cultures? Is there a variance? What's your perspective?
Well, there are variances, but in general it's always the same reasons that we've already talked about, the cause or don't cause customer or employee engagement. Yeah, it's basically the same model. Yeah, that works. There are some places that are a bit different because France, for example, we don't have the Great Resignation for the moment, for example, because we don't have full employment in France as compared to the United States. The United States, the employment levels are much higher. So in fact, people will stay even in a toxic work environment because they don't have much choice, But the other thing is that there's more protections. So the employment legislation in France is much more protective than in the US. So, if an employee is being, badly treated and so forth, it can very quickly become a huge problem for the leader or the manager concerned. Huh? Very quickly. I think in the States it must be the same legally. You have to be very careful how you treat people. But basically, the reasons for the engagement are the same. The only exceptional thing I saw in terms of countries would have been when I worked in Poland for 4 years. The Polish, they're just, it's not to make silly comparisons, but they're just fabulous. They just work so hard, you just have to say hi and thanks and they're off they go, they're fabulous,
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure, but it's also a pleasure to work with the French, I have to say. I live here, so.
Yes.
And also, I've met so many different cultures and in my teams, they were all multicultural. And it's really, as long as you're good to people and you treat them the right way, it doesn't matter whether they're French, American, or Polish. It's going to have the same results.
Well,
it's going to have good results.
And the right way, I want to add here.
Yeah.
The right way is actually different based on who you ask. So,
oh yeah,
my right way, the way I want to be treated, may be different than what's important to you. And that's,
of course,
where leaders really can make a difference and increase engagement by that alone.
Yeah, of course. And this is all about pressing the right buttons and the right people, yeah? It's a silly way to say it, but if everyone should read, of course they should read my books, of course, but they should also read some of the great books that were written by people like Peter Drucker or people like Kenneth Blanchard, for example, The 1 Minute Manager, because in that book he introduces what's now called the situational management model, so contextual management. And he invented it, But people don't know this, but he did invent it. So basically, different styles of management for different situations and for different people. And if you don't even know this basic model, of how to manage to be flexible in your management style in comparison and compared to who you've got in front of you, you're already lost. I mean, you don't know what you're doing. So because people just don't react the same way to the same stimulus. They just don't. So you have to understand this.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you have to be a very, very, very good listener. You have to be able to listen very well to people, because it's like when you compare an extrovert to an introvert. Sometimes it's just the first appearances can be a complete sham, because in fact the extrovert might be making a lot of noise but doesn't know what he's speaking about, and the introvert could be someone that's such a fantastic expert and has got so many good ideas but never speaks. So you shouldn't judge. You should take your time and learn to know your people. I think that's very important.
So as we come to the end, you might have just answered some of it, but I'll give you a chance to either reiterate this or something different. What is the best leadership advice you've given or received? What's that one thing?
The one phrase that always sticks in my mind is once I asked a guy, an older guy, a senior guy I was working with. I was a young manager, and I was making some mistakes, So I asked this guy. He wasn't even in my department, but I respected him a lot. And I said to him, listen, could you, how do you think I'm doing? How do you think I'm managing? And I got my answer. And he said, we're all basically in charge of what we say, but we're also prisoners of what we say. And we're masters of our own silence. So I think the message is very clear. So you basically said to me, everyone is, you're masters of your own silence, but prisoners of what you say. So that comes to a great phrase from Jimi Hendrix, which so knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. This is what I'd like to say to all leaders and all managers. Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. That's important.
You have me silenced. It is so good, and I'm digesting in my brain those words. Fantastic. I also ask you, what is the one takeaway you want people to remember around engagement to really increase the employee, agent, staff engagement? What's the one tip?
Well, it's quite a difficult question, and there's lots of different answers to it. But I'll give you the one answer that I think is it's a Japanese proverb this time. So it's vision without action is a daydream, but action without vision is a nightmare. So it's taking the time to think, to take a step back from what you're doing, to spend time planning, and not to just be action oriented. Always to have time to think. Make sure you have time to think, because you have the 5 P's of planning, which everyone knows, but rarely put into practice. So proper planning prevents poor performance. You take a step back, you take time for yourself to plan so that you don't put yourself under stress for no reason. That's my main advice to managers and leaders today.
But how does that link to engagement of your people?
Oh, sorry, Well, because you also give the time, because you give yourself that time, you're always in a very relaxed state, which means that when you receive people, you're not stressed, and you are showing that you're not stressed. So this is to do with what we said earlier about managing by example. People can see that you're at ease. They can see that you're at ease in their position, that you know what you're doing. And when you receive them in those one-to-ones, the best thing for employee engagement is to have formal one-to-one meetings on a frequent basis with them, once a month. Take them aside and let them know that they own that meeting. So they even prepare the agenda, they come back with the ideas, they even compare, they do the minutes for the meetings, They come back, they own the meeting, It's their meeting. Because then you get to the end of the year and there's no surprises in the the appraisal interview or the evaluation interview, however you want to call it, because we already saw each other 12 times this year. So there's no surprises. We know exactly where we are together.
So good. Last question before we wrap up is, if you could go back in time to your 20-year-old self based on what you know now that you didn't know then, what would you tell younger Rob?
I would tell younger Rob to get his act together, yeah? No, of course. But I'd also tell him, I think my main message to younger Rob would be to be more people-focused and less task-focused, yeah? Because when I was young, what I was extremely efficient. I could do, I don't know, multitasking, all these horrible things that, people think are possible, which they're not possible, in fact. And I used to do all these things. But what I used to do was take my attention away from the people I was actually working with and, concentrate far too much on actually the result that I was trying to get to, and not to concentrate on the people that are actually doing the work. So I think, if I had some advice to give to my younger self, it'd be really stop being so task-focused and focus more on the people.
Love that. And now it makes sense why you're so good at what you did and do. You made that a mission, and I love it. Well, people are going to want to find you. Mm-hmm. What is the best place? Is it your website, LinkedIn?
It's not my website yet, because that's under construction still. It's a new website. So, but where they can find me really easily is Robertson Hunter Stewart. All together in one word. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn. I've got quite a big following there, so you can find me easily there. Or Instagram or Twitter. I'm all over the place. So there's no problem. Or on my email, they can write to me directly. It's Rob Stewart, all together, 184@gmail.com. And you can, anyone that wants to, feels like they want to know more, they can write to me there. I'd be quite happy to reply.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I know that workplaces are going to be better off, have better engagement because of this conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Stacy, for your invitation. It's great. Great speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.